If you're interested in this or this design, they're still on the shop, the Teespring shop. The link is in the description. I'm going to be ending them somewhat soon, so get one soon if you want one. And thank you to all the people that have already gotten one. So there's lots of options when it comes to the insects that you're feeding your reptiles and amphibians. I say the three biggest are crickets, mealworms, and dubia roaches. There are others like superworms and calci worms and hornworms and butter waxworms. What are they? There's a lot. But I really only have experience with the crickets, mealworms, and dubias, and those are generally the most popular. Also, I know quite a few of you are probably in places where dubias are not allowed, like Canada, Florida, some other just completely random places. So unfortunately, that might not be an option for all of you, but we're going to compare all of them anyway. And in the past, I made a video focusing on crickets, but today we're going to be talking about all three and comparing them. First, we can go over some nutrition-y things. Keep in mind, I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know what's perfect for every single reptile, but hopefully I can give you a general idea on what is superior in each thing. For example, the protein. All these numbers are apparently the percentage of protein in a cricket. There's so much variation on every site, so it's a bit hard to tell. Some were just completely off and random, so I didn't even include those. But the general, I guess, average I could kind of find overall is about 19% fat, nope, not fat, protein in a cricket. For mealworms, I said $15 in my notes. I meant 15%. There's exactly $15 worth of protein, and then about 36% in dubia roaches. So as you can see, there's definitely the most protein in a dubia roach. Crickets and mealworms aren't too far apart, and again, that's not like a bad amount. That still works perfectly fine, but that's something to take into consideration. Next up, there's the fat. The dubias and the crickets are just about the same. There's not a huge difference. Crickets being about 6%, dubias being about 7%, and the mealworms being about 13%. Fat might be a good thing. Sometimes this is something that you do want more of, especially if you have an animal that's either underweight or very young that you want to make sure it actually can keep up with growing, because babies often grow so quickly, especially with reptiles. So that doesn't automatically mean that the twice as much fat in a mealworm is a bad thing, but it's something to take into consideration because it is possible with certain insects that you could lead to an overweight or obese animal. You don't want to just feed less of that to give it less fat, because you need it to get all the nutrients as well. And then things like superworms, that has even more fat. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but you can just look up and see what the actual amount of fat is in each insect. And then there's the calcium to phosphorus ratio. This is pretty important. Calcium, of course, is vital for your animal to grow healthy. And then the phosphorus is what kind of combats that calcium. So basically, your goal is to have more calcium than phosphorus. The nice thing is we do have access to calcium supplements and multivitamin supplements, which means that you can dust your insects, and it's something that you should, I think, always do with reptiles and amphibians. I don't know of any species where that shouldn't be done with the insects. But again, there's a ton of variation on sites. It looks like the crickets are about a 1:7 calcium to phosphorus ratio. That's a good bit of phosphorus, not exactly amazing. Now the crickets and dubia roaches, they have a pretty decent calcium to phosphorus ratio. It looks like dubias have the best one with about 1:3, which is what most sites are saying. So 1 part calcium to 3 parts phosphorus. Again, that's not exactly the ideal amount, but it is very different from the mealworms, which have a lot more phosphorus than calcium compared to the others. So this is a downside. So those are just some of the more technical things looking into those three insects with the protein, fat, and calcium to phosphorus. So with those numbers said, that doesn't exactly mean one's just automatically better than the others. Well, okay, I guess dubias kind of are. As kind of, if you don't know, dubia roaches are kind of universally known as the best feeder insect right now. So we can get into even more of the comparisons with them and talk about each specific one other than just some of these like vitamin buildups. First, let's talk about the most popular, that being crickets. And that's, I think, one of the pros of the crickets. They are just so popular. They're extremely easy to find. They're basically available everywhere. It's going to be rare if you can actually not find these somewhere to purchase them. Also, if you are someone that goes out and catches crickets to feed to your animal, I highly suggest you do not do that, because they can be carrying a lot more bacteria and parasites and things that you can't avoid with the captive bred insects. And crickets have just been used for such a long time that it's kind of clear that you're not going to have any super big issues with your animal, and chances are it's going to be perfectly healthy on an all cricket diet. I did a video a while ago talking about all the cons of crickets, which we'll talk about now in just a second. But as these almost more popular insects come up, like Dubia roaches, how they're gaining so much popularity, I think that is a good thing, because just because something has been used for a long time doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. Let's get on to some cons with the crickets. Firstly, they are considered to be the least nutritious. We went over those few things. You can look into them even more. Really, overall, they just have the least amount of nutrients and vitamins and minerals compared to the other ones naturally. Like I said, there are multivitamin and calcium supplements which can fix this. So if you are doing crickets, you can definitely make them super healthy. But compared to the others, the nutrition is lacking a bit. I'm very glad I don't have crickets anymore. There's just a lot of things that bug me, probably more than the animal that you're feeding it. For example, they just smell bad. I don't know why. They don't even have to die. They just have a bad smell, even if you keep that thing clean. They're also very loud. Some people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh, well, I love the sound of crickets on a nice spring night. I'm sure it would be nice. It's not. I like the sound of crickets outside too. But when you hear just how loud one cricket is in your room, you're really gonna wish it just didn't exist. And the great thing is you really can't find them after they escape. They know how to hide in the perfect places. They might get in the wall or even under the floor if you have cracks, and they will chirp very loud. It's annoying. In addition to this, they have very short lifespans, so you're gonna kind of have to buy them often. Like if you have just one leopard gecko and you want to get it crickets, you can't just buy 2,000 crickets and expect them to last forever. Because they just naturally have short lifespans, they're going to be dying off somewhat often. You're going to have to then take them out and throw them away, and that just causes more smell. Then you have to buy more of them. Crickets just aren't that fun. They also bite. I don't think this is really any hazard to your animal, like your animal's just going to eat it pretty much immediately. But I've been bitten by the crickets before, and it hurts a lot more than I expected. So that's just kind of annoying. They're also pretty difficult to breed if that's something you're interested in. So in my experience, what I basically had to do is buy crickets constantly, have them die constantly, have them be loud and annoying and smelly, just for me to go buy more because they're dying so fast. I'm not on good terms with feeder insects when it comes to crickets. Let's move on to mealworms though. This is what I swapped to after crickets. I had everything on crickets, all of my animals that eat insects, and then I switched them all to mealworms. Mealworms are like the most controversial feeder insect. Some of the cons, we can start with that, is they have harder exoskeletons, so a lot of people say there's issues potentially with the animal digesting them, just because they're not as soft as a cricket. There's also some sites that just flat out say, like, don't feed mealworms to bearded dragons. There's others that say it's fine. I don't have experience in this, so I can't answer that. But I have fed mealworms to both my leopard gecko, my blue-tongue skink, and my amphibians for a very long time. Amphibians, they were on mealworms for years, and they had no issues whatsoever. There's also this worry that they're going to chew through your animal. I think I did a super old video on this, which the info is still relevant, even though I'm sure it's a really poorly made video. So there are a lot of bad connotations around them, and some of them, I'm sure it's definitely true in some cases, but in my experience personally, they've been perfectly fine. But like I said, that really biggest thing is the fact that they do have a lot of phosphorus. But the pros with the mealworms is they're probably the cheapest. And the great thing is you don't even have to feed them. You can just stick them in the fridge and leave them there. Putting them in the fridge puts them into a dormant state so they don't grow and they don't need to consume anything. As long as you don't freeze them, they'll last there for a while, not forever. I found that I can get them to last like maybe a few months, and then you can just take them out, let them warm up, they'll start moving around, and they're ready to be eaten by your animal. This means that you can buy them in larger quantities. They're not going to just die after a week or after a month. They can sit in there and you can take them out as you need them. And then if you do leave them out, you can just feed them and then they'll grow. And eventually they'll turn into the darkling beetles, which you can breed. I used to breed mealworms, but I couldn't do it fast enough to actually feed all the animals. And it was just kind of a pain, so I just stopped. And then we can talk about Dubia roaches, which I'm now on. I switched from crickets to mealworms, and now to dubias, which I've been on, I don't know, probably hasn't been a year yet. I'm not good at time. It's been a while though. And I can definitely say they're the nicest to keep. They are the creepiest. The first con with them is they're like universally hated by parents. Maybe if you ask me if it's okay to use another insect because your parents simply don't want roaches in the house, which I understand the idea of roaches. I'm not a big fan of them. I'm not a huge insect person overall. If I didn't have to keep them, I probably wouldn't keep them. However, they really aren't that much of a pain. You do have to feed them, unlike the mealworms, but it's pretty simple and they're not going to die very quickly. In fact, I think the lifespan of a female dubia is like 2 years, and then a male is a bit shorter because you don't need them around for as long. They just gotta mate and then die. And they do grow pretty slowly, so they are going to change size over time. And personally, I do still buy a ton of them at once, but I can actually breed them now. I forgot I had this container right here. These are some that I just ordered. These are very small ones and they grow to be very big, like a couple inches maybe, inch to 2 inches. And then I do already have some that are breeding. They're super simple to breed. I did a video on it. So I do have little babies running around. They don't escape very easily. They can't climb smooth surfaces, so you don't have to worry about them like getting out of a plastic tub, but you should still definitely use a top, and I do have the occasional escapee. This is usually if I forget to put the top on, and then it's if I just dropped one by accident and couldn't find it. But if these escape, they're not going to annoy you forever. They don't chirp or make noise or anything, so it's not a huge deal, which I'm guessing that's why they're not allowed in Florida, because they don't eat any more invasive animals there. So do your best to keep them contained. It's really easy to. And on top of that, Dubia roaches are considered to be the most nutritious insect. They do have some other downsides. I think they're the most expensive out of the others, but it's worth the investment if you can afford it. It's not like some massive difference, but you won't exactly get quite as many dubias for the same amount of money as you can with a mealworm or cricket. Also, dubias do not bite, so you don't have to worry about that with your animal. Mealworms and crickets, they definitely do bite sometimes. I don't think it's a huge concern, but it is something else to think about, and I'd rather not be bit by crickets. But this is my comparison on the crickets versus mealworms versus Dubia roaches. Make sure to leave any info that you know about in the comments of this video on any of these 3 insects or any others that you can feed your animals with different pros and cons or anything that I might have missed in this. But hopefully this helped you out a bit. Long story short, if you can find some dubias, then get some dubias because they're pretty much the best. If you need somewhere to buy them, I get my dubias from dubiaroaches.com, which I have a link in the description for some percentage off, which then I get what do I get? $5 of free roaches? Also, me and a few others have had the issue with dubiaroaches.com where we got smaller insects than we actually ordered, but I think that's probably because they're kind of maybe running out for the season. In fact, if you're watching this in December, they're about to cut off the shipping period, so that's possibly why. I've ordered from them a handful of times. It was perfectly fine just about every time, but there have been a couple issues, so you can look around at different sites. But I do still buy from dubiaroaches.com. Just want to let you know that they're not perfect all the time. And then I used to get mealworms from rainbowmealworms.com. I found that it's kind of best to buy the insect from the place that like focuses on that. For example, Rainbow Mealworms, I think they sell dubias and mealworms, but they have cheaper mealworms, and then dubiaroaches.com, they sell dubias and mealworms, but they have cheaper dubias. And then crickets, I don't even know where to get crickets. I haven't bought crickets in like 3 or 4 years. Not 3 or 4 years, like 2 or 3 years, but I'm very happy about that, so I don't know where to get those. But yeah, that should be it for this video. Again, shirt designs still here. If you want one, here's Sunny. But that'll be it for this video. So I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.